In Washington, Senate Republicans began marking up their tax reform plan this week. The House is expected to vote on its version on Thursday. The GOP hoping to send a final bill to the president by the end of the year. There are reports today that top Silicon Valley investors and companies are already mobilizing against the Senate plan. But our next guest, who knows a little bit of something about the House bill, is different. He says it's different and spurs innovation by strengthening the idea of stock options for private companies. Joining us now, first on CNBC, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Leader McCarthy, it's great to see you from this perch. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the House and the Senate package. But first, the president is going to be visiting the House GOP members on Thursday. What would you like him to say to solidify support among the conference?
Well, most important, I want him to say that, one, we're united going forward, that we're giving tax cuts, creating jobs, we're making America more competitive. But more importantly, that we'll go to conference with the Senate bill as well. Because there will be some differences in the Senate bill, as many of your viewers know, because the House bill wants to make sure we stay innovative. You look at, we're extending the R&D tax credit, which is so important. And also, when it defers the stock options, so those employees, those that are taking a stock option instead of getting the salary, that they can own part of the company, that they're not hit with the tax without even having the stock yet, that they get to defer that further forward. So I think that creates more innovation, more startups, and makes America more competitive.
Our last guest praised that idea that you have written op-eds about in the FT and elsewhere, but said that you should have held a hearing to make sure that that sort of a proposal is ironclad and that everyone understands the value in it. Why not?
Well, we've had held hearings. I've actually passed this portion of the tax bill off the floor last year. I chair and created an Innovation Initiative Caucus. This was one of the elements of it. It had gotten stopped in the Senate. So we've held that in the past. We know that it's good policy, so we put it into the tax bill. Congressman Eric Paulson on Ways and Means has been one of those individuals, part of the Innovation Caucus, that's been working with me on it. It's part of his bill that he was being able to put into the tax bill.
I have to be honest, I've never heard traders on the floor ever mention the bird rule before, but that's something that has become, you know, normal vernacular around here as people are watching the stock market. There were 355 amendments just put forward yesterday in front of Senate Finance. I mean, how long is conference going to take? Can you reasonably get a bill on the president's desk by the end of the year?
Oh, yes, we will. So think about this. We've moved through, and the reason why the House starts first is the Constitution. Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution says all tax reform will start in the House. So we started the bill a while back. We had markup in Ways and Means Committee all week long. It came out of Ways and Means. And then you notice the Senate version, it's still writing to the same rule that you talk about, a $1.5 trillion. So there's a lot of the similar parameters based upon it, but inside there are some differences. The phasing in of the corporate rate on the Senate side, we instantaneously go to 20. Then the Senate will mark it up in committee this week while we pass it off the floor. They'll come back after Thanksgiving, pass it, and then we'll go to conference. I do not think it'll take long till we come back with that final version, move that to the president's desk in December.
Speaking of the Senate side, Leader McCarthy, Rand Paul this morning says he'll seek an amendment looking to repeal the individual mandate, something the president has also said, wouldn't that be nice? How seriously should we take that?
I mean, you can take it serious. It's not in the House version, but if it does go into the Senate version, it could go into conference. And that's another element, because when you look at, if you did that on the individual mandate, it would free up a lot of individuals from paying a tax. So that's about $300 billion, a little more than that it gets scored, that you could spend on this tax bill as well. So when you're in conference, it would give you a lot more flexibility to be able to do more things of what you're looking for to make America more competitive.
As you adjust this bill, Leader McCarthy, where does the whip count shake out? Because I understand that that's something that's happening early this week as some of the details on state and local tax deductions are settled, with Chairman Brady saying that he won't accept a full repeal of that. I mean, you win MacArthur, but you lose ICE. I mean, where's the whip count right now?
Well, the one thing, we never talk about the whip count. We're moving forward. Members know where the bill is at. In the House version, because when you look at state and local tax deduction, we keep the mortgage deduction. What we did was we added $10,000 for a property tax deduction. The national average that somebody pays is $2,500. That was to help those states, much as California, New York, and New Jersey. There are other elements that we can go through and work on, but I think that would be more during the conference after it comes out of the House and out of the Senate that we can work on those elements. But I do not believe the Senate version could pass the House without some working and reflection upon those SALT states as well. And that gives a lot of credit to those members in the SALT states that are trying to find a solution, but at the same time making sure their constituents get a tax cut and more job creation in their own states. And remember this. When you eliminate the alternative minimum tax, if you take an individual like California, maybe they have a little higher SALT and they're paying somewhere around $17,000, but they may be paying the AMT somewhere about $5,600. That $5,600 is really worth more than $20,000. So when you look at the entirety of the bill, at the end of the day, the majority of people will be saving money.
We don't talk a lot about some elements of politics on this particular channel. I'm talking about Roy Moore in this case. But suddenly he's part of the discussion, leader, about whether or not his vote could or could not make a difference on the Senate side on the margin. What's being said where you are about that possibility?
Well, that's on the Senate side, and that's a special election coming forward. But the question about Roy Moore is about what's coming forward with him. I have real questions about, I think he ought to do the right thing and pull back and have somebody else run. But when I look at this bill, I mean, there's some things that are happening that people aren't talking about. You know, by lowering the corporate rate, you look at a company like Broadcom. Broadcom has already announced that they're going to move back to America. They started in America. They domiciled into Singapore because our tax code was too burdensome for them to compete globally. Now they're coming back. For so long, how many stories have you had on your show of companies leaving just because of the tax code to be able to compete? Now we're hearing stories of coming back. Broadcom, $20 billion a year, $6 billion they invest in manufacturing, $3 billion in just R&D. That's the type of stories we want to hear about America, and I think that's where our tax code lets us be more competitive. And then no one's really talked about what we're doing with repatriation and going to a territorial tax that you'll never be taxed again on that, and you'll be coming back into America, investing in American companies, or paying out some pretty good dividends to American shareholders.
Well, perhaps they're going to be using some of that money to reattempt a big takeover of Qualcomm, but that story is not finished quite yet. For now, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, appreciate your time and you joining us on Squawk Alley.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.